You requested a sit down. He heard you out.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of The Sit Down. Finally, we got a guest on this week. We have entrepreneur, author, teacher, and Bronx native, Mike DeLucia. I'm so pumped to have you on, Mike. How's it going?
I'm doing great, man. I'm pumped to be on.
Yeah, awesome. Bronx native. I was just at the Ferragosto the other week.
You were?
Yeah.
You know, I was supposed to go. I go every year, and this
Yeah.
fell on my mom's birthday. My mom's born on September 11th.
Yeah.
So, you know, she's 88, and we just couldn't between the dogs and
Yeah, and it was a full-on downpour this year.
you know what? A couple of years ago, it was the same thing. It was a full-on downpour, but we went anyway. A group of us go. But you know, I unfortunately didn't get a chance.
Yeah, it's one of my absolute favorite feasts. It's just a one day, but like even I went last year, and this year, even with the rain, it was, I think, maybe bigger than last year. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's always a good time. Arthur Avenue is, I go down several times a year. That's where I get all my olive oil, and you know, you get some great mozzarella down there in Casa della Mozzarella. Have you ever been there? You ever been to Casa della Mozzarella?
No, that's something I'm about to write down right now.
Write down that one, Casa della Mozzarella.
All right.
As soon as you approach the main avenue, there's Full Moon Pizza on the
Okay.
corner, which I highly recommend. Excellent Bronx pizza. I brought my family from Italy there recently because, you know, they were saying that the pizza in Manhattan was terrible, and they were being nice about it. They weren't, you know, but
Yeah.
I said, no, that's not you know, you have to have real Bronx pizza. So
Yeah, well, there's also certain spots, like there's some very bad New York pizza spots, but I go to, like, you first off, you can't mind spending the extra money because it's so worth it when you're getting pizza in the city. Yeah.
That's how it's kind of like one of the criteria how I judge, you know, a place. I always want to know how the pizza is. It's the first question I will ask when talking about neighborhoods, no matter where it is. How's the pizza? If the pizza's good, that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
But Full Moon is good. And then when you pass by Full Moon, you go Casa della Mozzarella, and then DeLulo's, which is it's a good bakery, and they have really great Italian ices.
Okay.
You know, ices that people around the country don't even know exists. Though, you know, those cream ices.
Mhm.
And then you move down a little bit from that, and you go to Bugatti ravioli. It's the best.
Yeah, people don't understand how awesome Arthur Avenue is and how, like, just authentic it is. Like the businesses there, like all Italian owned, all super authentic. There's shout out to Trini's Gifts.
Mhm.
It's like I went in there for the first time and I was like, oh my God, this is everything I grew up with, down to like the silverware, the certain knives. It's, yeah, for anybody visiting New York or in New York that hasn't taken the trip to Arthur Avenue, it's the real Little Italy for sure.
Yes, absolutely. The one in Manhattan, unfortunately, has shrunk so much.
Yeah.
It lost a lot. The one in Boston is good. Have you ever been to
The
the one
North,
in
oh
Boston?
my God, don't give me, I love the North End. The North End's one of my favorite places like in the world.
Yeah, it's there's a little Italian bookstore there called Me Too. I think it's called Me Too. Anyway, I did a book talk there.
Oh,
and,
nice.
and I have my books in that store. But
Yeah, so I mean, you were born and raised in the Bronx though. So how does it fare from now till when you were growing up there?
you know, I moved out in 1991, so I'm going to be 62 very soon, November, and you know, I moved out in 91, suburbs. I had some kids at the time, and you know, so I mean, I go back to the old neighborhood, it's Pelham Bay Throgs Neck section, and you know, it's the same and very different.
Hmm.
You know, there are a couple of restaurants left, you know, but a lot of them have closed. But you know, you still have Arthur Avenue. You know, Arthur
Yeah.
Avenue is pretty, you know, and that wasn't too far from where we grew up. Morris Park is still good.
Hmm.
That's another Italian stronghold in the Bronx. They still have some, you know, I've been down there a couple of times. They're good. Some good Italian food. And you know, it's funny. I went to you know, the dinner after the wake, and it was in Pauling, New York. I don't know if you've ever heard of Pauling, New York,
No.
but the guy who passed away was a Bronx guy. And we go to this Italian restaurant in Pauling, and in the back of my mind, I'm judging, okay, right off the bat. It's like we're in Pauling, okay, and the food was fabulous. He had
Right.
little pizzas. He had, little rice balls, and I'm saying this is good stuff. So the owner came by, I saw him, and I was like, "Are you from the Bronx?" He said, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, I got it." Because this stuff, I said, people around here, their signs say Italian food, but it's really not Italian food.
Mhm.
You have Italian food in here. And he was happy to say the cannolis were fabulous, nice and crunchy.
Yep.
Anyway, so yeah, so that's about food, right? I mean, we can go on and talk about all the great food. I have a friend of mine who said, because I talk a lot about the contributions of Italians, not only Italian Americans, but of course, Italy and
Oh,
Italians.
for sure.
And this friend of mine said, Mike, forget the Renaissance, forget the Roman Empire. If all Italians contributed to the world was the food, we'd still be at the top of the heap.
I love it. Absolutely. I mean, honestly, it's like you look at like Michelin star restaurants, and there's like French restaurants, like Italian restaurants. It's like Italian is everyone's, not, if not number one, number two favorite type of food.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, I think that's fact. I think.
Oh, it's you can't go anywhere in the world and not see Italian food, at least in my scope. I mean, I've been to a lot of places. I have not been to Asia yet, but maybe that's a great place to open up a nice Bronx pizzeria.
Maybe. Maybe that's not a bad idea. Yeah. So like, I mean, let's kind of jump right into it. So you moved, I mean, what did you do? I guess, growing up, like after high school, after college, like a little bit of your origin story.
I went to Catholic grammar school, and I went to Catholic high school, which, the grammar school part is highlighted in my book, Being Brothers. It was a unique experience in the 1960s and 70s going to a Catholic school.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a unique experience. And after that, my father, demanded that we went to college. That he said, you have to go to college, you have to go to college. And I really didn't want to go to college. I wanted to be an actor. And so I went to college for one semester, didn't do any work, and I think I was asked to leave. It was at the end of the second semester or the first semester, I forgot which one. I went to Queens College actually for
Oh,
free.
nice. Right around the corner for me.
Yeah, and I went to acting school in Manhattan, and I did that, for a while, and I kind of got caught between that, love of career and childhood sweetheart. And back in the 60s and 70s, I got married at 22. I was
Okay.
22 years old. I was, so I married my childhood sweetheart, and before you know it, we had kids, and so the acting career, kind of flew out the window, and I went into business for myself. I had a Wise potato chip franchise in the Bronx, and
cool.
and I had lots of businesses. I had a party supply store. I had party rooms for kids. I had a children's entertainment. I was a DJ for a while. A lot of ventures, and then eventually. I used to work for I had a franchise with Anheuser-Busch had a snack called Eagle Snacks. You probably never heard of
It sounds slightly familiar.
it. The honey roasted peanut was born in from Eagle Snacks.
Okay.
Created that whole line. And they sold everything off, and then from there I was like, I was in business my whole life. And at that point, somebody said, I had an acting school on the side, and somebody said, you should be a teacher. And I thought about it for a little bit, and that's when I came up with my DJ business. And I went to school during the day, and I DJ'd at night, and
Perfect.
I became a high school English teacher.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what was that like transition? Because I know, like, I'm self-employed as well. I do social media marketing. So like to go from like being in business and just like every day being like anything new, something new, to just English teacher, how was that transition? What was that like?
Um, you know, first of all, being a teacher, i- in some ways, you're kind of almost your own, entrepreneur, right? Because
Mhm,
everybody is got their own flair that they bring to the business. And
mhm.
I called it 5 live shows a day. You can't hide, when you've got, because kids can sniff out weakness
Oh
and
my God. Yeah.
in a second. So I called it 5 live shows a day, and I made education as fun as I could for the kids. I like to make people laugh, and ninth graders are especially easy to make laugh. By the time they get into 10th grade, it's either I'm not as funny, or the kids are just
They're too cool for
getting
school.
too cool by the time they're sophomores.
Mhm.
They lighten up by the time they're seniors, but it was good. I really enjoyed it. I liked teaching, and I was able to blend a lot of things together because I had my theater background and I was into plays, and
Oh
so
yeah, very true.
so I it was really, and how it changed my life on this end of the scale is that I was an English major. So I studied, the greatest literature on both sides of the pond, as they call it.
Mhm.
And so I read all the great authors, all the great works. And so that foundation helped me to become a much better writer than I would have ever been without, all of those tons and tons of books, and really brilliant professors who, talked about, writing and poetry and Shakespeare and all of those things. That vast knowledge, really helps you as a writer, just embed, you know, uh, stuff into your text,
Mhm.
and yeah, I got thrown a little bit because my dog Carmine, right now, I don't know if you heard, if you picked it up, he's fooling around downstairs.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, my first historical fiction novel, Madness, The Man Who Changed Basketball. Very few people know that it was an Italian American who revolutionized the entire game of basketball and
I did not knowing that.
responsible for March Madness and laid the foundation for the NBA. Hold on, that's Carmine. I have
Yeah,
to
no
shut
worries.
this door.
No worries.
Okay. Um, yeah. So, and in that story, there's elements of the Odyssey,
Okay.
whereas Hank Louis Eddy, is like Odysseus on this journey, to be this hero. And so again, the knowledge I have, or that knowledge base from college, found its way into my works, and in modern times, a modern writer.
No, absolutely. I don't get me wrong. I'm not versed in, I guess, that much of English, or I mean, a little bit of history. I took a semester of theater in college, but it's easy to see like when like certain plays, like Hamlet, for example, and then you could spot like Hamlet in almost every single movie that you watch that has those same like resemblance, like like obviously like the Lion King,
Right.
and certain other stuff. But that's always cool. I think that's like an Easter egg certain authors put in there too.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's cool to, again, to, well, like, Stephen King says, the best writers are people who read the most, or in order to be a great writer, you must be an avid reader. And it all, kind of, it all comes together when you combine writing and reading.
Mhm.
And also, a lot of these professors are just like, they've dedicated their lives to study,
Oh
the
yeah.
study of of these authors, and you get a bird's eye view when you're taking, college level and graduate level classes about, these brilliant people. And it, again, it finds its way into your work somehow.
I've got a question then. What would you say are like a couple books, maybe just off the top of your head, um, it could be fiction or nonfiction that could really help people, I guess, with creativity or, yeah, I guess like more or less like creativity or finding like their success like in life.
Oof.
I know I guess I mean, it's a tough question, but maybe just a couple off the top of your head.
Um, you're talking about um, like classic works or any work.
Whatever, I guess, kind of calls you or like that you've taken maybe inspiration from, or that have just like kind of like, I guess like almost like the first thing that would pop to your head.
Um, there is this writer Francine Prose, and before I wrote, I would always listen to her book Golden Grove, and Golden Grove is, you really, really have to understand the author. It's kind of an edgy book, but
Okay.
put that aside and putting the content aside, um, I just find her writing to be so, descriptive, but not to the point of annoying. You could read, like Moby Dick,
Mhm.
and sometimes Melville will just go off, on I remember joking one time. I said, yeah, the book would be a lot shorter if he didn't spend like 4 pages talking about like a wave. But Francine Prose's Golden Grove is a book that, again, if I would listen to it before I wrote, I honestly felt as though it helped me,
Very
write
cool.
better, to see, the images the way she does. And yeah, so that's one.
Yeah. And then I guess another question, like what books would you recommend, just like you need to read like these 3 books in your lifetime? Someone I guess you'd recommend it to like maybe like actually, no, let's just keep it broad, just to like anybody. Like these are the few books that you should read in your lifetime.
Um, Without a doubt, To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay.
And I might say To Kill a Mockingbird should be read 1, 2, and 3. So maybe those should be the 3 books that you read and that you must read.
Mhm.
Um, it is such, eh, to me, it's just the pinnacle of it. It all starts with that. And yeah, I've read the book probably close to 30 times.
Wow.
And
Well, did you teach it too?
yes,
Yeah.
that's why I
Yeah.
read it so many times, because it was the last book of the year I taught at the end of the year, and I felt we've spent so much time, on all these other books. Let's just sit down and have reading time. And I would
Mhm.
literally read the book and all the different accents of all the different characters, and I would stop and I would ask questions. And it wasn't just I was reading it deadpan. I was reading it and I was making connections to other things. They say there's not a lesson in life that cannot be learned or cannot be found when in the pages of those of that book. Um, I would say, um, you know, Romeo and Juliet. Um, it's some of the most beautiful poetry, the most gorgeous writing that I, I mean, Shakespeare, when you talk about Shakespeare, a lot of times you talk about Hamlet and you talk about Othello and you talk about Macbeth. Shakespeare was his first. That was the beginning, they say, of his mastery. Uh,
Mhm.
his and what makes that book, that play, enter into that category wasn't so much the characterization, of Romeo or Juliet, but the language. The language is so gorgeous that just kind of reading through it, and sort of, even if you get the No Fear Shakespeare, where it has the American version on the
Mhm.
other side, I was never opposed to that. And just, kind of, and, to pair that along with Shakespeare in Love. Did you ever see that movie?
Which one? What were the actors in that one? Because I feel like we were.
Rush, um, Gwyneth Paltrow. Um, God, there's a score of them.
Yeah, I gotta check maybe because we were shown like a couple of like during Romeo and Juliet in high school, but it's been so long.
Shakespeare in Love. Check it out.
Okay.
It's fabulous. What's the third one? I mean, I don't know. There are so many. I love The Raisin in the Sun.
Okay, I've
Uh,
never heard of that one.
Angela Lansbury. Now because I said that, now it threw the author off. Raisin in the Sun, nonetheless, Mama is one of my favorite literary characters. And I just there's so much in there about dreams. Like anybody who wants to who's got a dream in life. That's what this story is all about. It's based on Langston Hughes's poem, um, "What Happens to a Dream Deferred,"
Okay.
and it talks about he so Hansberry takes that little poem, and she writes this play. Um, what happens to a dream deferred? What happens when a dream is pushed away from somebody? If you hold it in front of them and take it away, what it does, to the person. So there's a lot of depth in A Raisin in the Sun. And again, Mama is probably my favorite. She's my favorite female literary character of all time. And so I guess I would recommend those three.
Awesome. No, awesome. I know I love getting recommendations from someone who like is like a master of their craft. So you being an author, I feel like you're a book recommendation for someone like you beats Google probably for in my opinion. And I know I am, and my girlfriend always is looking for book recommendations, and I'm getting sick and tired of buying the same books from the same one author. So
Okay. All right. Well,
yeah.
yeah. Okay. Cool.
No, for sure. But so I read on your website you didn't actually publish a book until you were 56 years old. What made you jump into the writing side of things? Was that after you've been a teacher too?
Yeah. Um, you know, I always had stories in my head and I always wanted to, make movies. That was always my biggest dream.
Mhm.
And madness in the 1980s when I started to write that, I'd gotten married, and like I explained to you before, you know, I really struggled with the choice because there was, marriage and family and house and all of those dreams, on this side. And then the other side was this hurricane inside of me that wanted to be this famous actor, that wanted to,
Mhm.
make movies. That's what I wanted to do. And once I was really kind of held down by my business and by the life I did choose, um, I decided that I was going to be Sylvester Stallone and I was going to write the next, movie, and I wasn't going to sell it unless I was the star.
Mhm.
And so I started, we're having, dinner, family dinner. My wife and I went to mom and dad's house, and I explained to the family at, macaroni and meatballs. We were sitting around. And I said, you know what, I'm going to write a movie and I'm going to star in it. I had never written anything before except some poetry. And my father said, what are you going to write about? I said, I have no idea. But he said, well, I have the perfect story for you. He said, the greatest movie, best basketball player of all time. And I said, who? He said, Hank Luisetti. And I was like, well, if he's the greatest basketball player of all time, how come I or nobody else has ever heard his name before? And then he went into it and he started to tell me some facts that he told me were actually correct. But he said he invented the layup and he changed basketball. He was the first person. He didn't invent the layup.
I was gonna say that was my first question. Did he really invent the layout?
He perfected, and he was the first person to shoot with one hand
Oh wow.
in, in major competition. Before that, it was, people were doing it here and there, but it was really frowned upon. He perfected it. He was 50 years ahead of his time.
Wow.
He was they used to score 30 points in a basketball game, 20, 25 points. He was the first person to score 50 points in a game by himself.
Wow.
He was an absolute juggernaut. What he did for basketball the story is absolutely incredible. So when I went down, there was no such thing as an internet in 1982 or 3, whatever it was.
Mhm.
So I went down to the library in Manhattan and I was searching through microfilms until I started to find stories about Luisetti. And so that was the first thing I wrote. The whole first script was, and I wrote it as a movie, a screenplay, was written in pencil. I wrote
Wow.
it out, and then I just kept perfecting it over the years and going back to it. Sometimes I'd put it away for 5, 10 years, didn't
Mhm.
do anything. But so I started, writing that, and then I also had another idea for this baseball movie, and I had it from the time I was. It goes back to the '70s, and I had this idea in my head, and I explain it all in the forward of Born for the Game,
Okay.
my latest book. And I was just about to write Born for the Game, and being a big Yankees fan, I got struck with this idea because I was part of that whole romantic era of baseball. From, I guess it was from the '70s and the '80s, back.
Mhm.
Um, and how baseball was changing and how sports was changing, and it wasn't about the fans anymore. It was about the money. It was about greed and ego. And so I scrapped Born for the Game, and I decided to write Boycott the Yankees, a call to action by a lifelong Yankees fan.
Mhm.
And it was just about boycotting until they lowered the ticket prices so the real fans could go back to the ball game again and represent our team.
Yeah.
uh,
What year did you write that book?
about 10 years ago.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly.
So unfortunately, they haven't lowered the ticket price
No, not at all, but they
because I
did.
just bought tickets for Thursday and I spent an arm and a leg.
Yeah, yeah. When I was a kid, true story, my mom used to give me a couple of bucks. We didn't have a lot of money.
Mhm.
My dad, worked, and my mom, was a stay-at-home mom, and she'd give me a couple of bucks, maybe, a dollar or two, and that was enough. My
Mhm.
friends and I would take a train down to Yankee Stadium. That money that she gave us, that dollar or two, we'd get us tickets to the bleachers and get us some food and train ride back home and maybe even a pennant. I don't know, but that's what we used to do, and now you can't do that anymore. Bringing your family to a Yankees game is a commitment of a lot of money. My father used to throw a bunch of us in the car, my friends and family, and go down to a game today. Something like that costs you 700, 800 bucks if you start loading a bunch
Oh
of people
yeah, I
in
just
the
spent
car.
I got seats in the 200 sections towards right field. I paid $160 for 2 tickets.
Yeah. So anyway, so I wrote Boycott the Yankees. I was actually interviewed on national television for that book.
Wow.
Um, and and it was pretty cool. It was funny. It was a funny experience because I got the gig. I was on Curtis Lee was Live at 5.
Oh
Drive
yeah.
at Drive at 5. Yeah, it was
Mhm.
on that. With him, he picked the story up because somebody did something on it in a newspaper, and his agent called me. And I was on Fox News, one of their cable news stations, and we kind of talked about the gig. We settled everything, and then like I was like, "Well, this is going to be taped, right?" And and the girl on the phone said, "No, no, this is live."
Oh my
And I was like, "Oh, okay."
God.
So that night, a limo was coming to pick me up in the morning.
Uh,
And that night I had like, do you ever have one like a panic attack? Do you ever have one of those? I woke up at like, who knows, 2, 3 in the morning. I was like, and I was like, all right, I got this. I got it. I got it. And that was it. I had my moment of freak out, in
uh,
case you get, you freeze or something, on live television,
yeah.
national television. It wasn't like a little local station. It was, um, so did Boycott the Yankees. And then after that, I said, I'm going to write Born for the Game. I'm going to do Born for the Game. I pushed that aside. Now I'm going to do that one. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to put Madness. I'm going to put Madness out as a book, the Hank Lucetti story. I'm going to put that out as a book. So
Mhm.
that's how I'm going to get people to be interested in the topic. So
Yep.
then we'll make the movie. So I wrote Madness, and I had some interest from a bunch of people on that, to be made into a movie. The budget is quite large. Um, and so it didn't really,
Mhm.
pan out at this point, not yet. And then a friend of mine said, you know what, since the budget on that one is so high, you have like another idea for like another, book that he say, look, I've got, Madness, and the budget is, 35 million, but I've also got this other book. If you can like throw a movie out there for like, maybe $1 to $5 million, maybe. So then I wrote Being Brothers.
Mhm.
And then after that, then I finally wrote Born for the Game, which is the one I was supposed to write before Boycott the Yankees. And I finally got that out. And actually I have some interest in that one, right now.
Awesome. Now, for for everybody that hasn't read the book yet, what's Born for the Game about?
Oh my God.
I guess just a quick like synopsis so they could.
People say it's the most unique. That's not even correct. It's a unique baseball story. It's about the first female baseball player who makes it into the major leagues, and it's believable.
Mhm.
I made it so that it's possible. What she
Okay.
does, how she gets there. Um, and I feature Italians in all of my stories. One of the topics we have not talked about, was how Italians are represented in film.
Oh yeah, that's gonna that we're saving the best for last.
Okay. So I have my, I have, the characters in my stories are, Italians that are just regular people.
Mhm.
The leading character, the protagonist, Ryan Stone, in this, her mom, well, she's half Italian. Her parents were both Olympic athletes. Her grandmother was an Olympic ice skater, and her great grandfather was Enrico Fermi. Her actual, that's that it's on her mom's side. So not only is she a tremendous athlete, but she's
She's
also a genius.
smart. Yeah. Enrico Fermi was don't tell me he worked on he was a nuclear physicist or
He
right?
was he was really the brains behind the atom bomb.
Yep.
When people talk about the atom bomb, they talk about Oppenheimer, they talk about um, um, Einstein, but it was really he was the real nucleus behind it all. And you know what? Germany was working on the atom bomb as well.
Mhm.
What would this world be like if Nazi Germany got the atom bomb before the United States did?
Yeah.
This would be a whole different world. So Enrico Fermi and his work and what he brought to the table um, changed the world. So
No, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I did a little bit of research on him because I do the Italian American of the Week now.
mhm.
So I try to highlight a different Italian American that obviously isn't related to any sort of like criminal activity, anything. I try to even stay away from actors
Mhm.
and like singers because obviously everybody knows the Sinatras and the De Niros of the world. So I highlight people like Antonio Meucci, who invented the telephone. I've done athletes like Rocky Marciano, Joe DiMaggio. This week, a spoiler alert is actually going to be oh my god, I'm already blanking on his name. The founder of Tropicana,
Oh, okay.
who is Italian American. But
Have you
like
done AP Giannini yet?
who?
AP Giannini?
No.
Okay, definitely do something on him.
Okay.
He is he created his story is phenomenal. Do you ever see It's a Wonderful Life?
Yep.
They say um, that the main character was based on him.
Okay.
Not him, but based on him. He
Mhm.
started the whole before AP Giannini started the Bank of Italy. Before him, banks were very, kind of
Oh, was he the founder of Bank of America? I mean,
yes,
after the fact. Okay, yeah, because
yeah,
his bank was bought. I mean, they merged into what's now Bank of America.
right. But
Okay.
great story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you use authentic Italian Americans in all of your writings.
Yes, so far. And I continue to, the I have a couple of ideas, I'll get them in. I will get them in because my goal is to have them in as just regular people, and no matter what, even if this story takes place, I write something that takes place in England.
Mhm.
I mean, there could be, Italians, there. I just want regular people just to combat, to represent Italians in a truthful way, since Hollywood has created a stereotype of Italians, and they have perpetuated, this image so much so that in essence, they've brainwashed the world into thinking that Italians, are this instead of, this,
Yeah.
that, the contributions that Italians, have made, have been reduced to what Hollywood wants to show. And it's because they're making money. Business is good, and they continue to perpetuate. You know, I have no problem with mafia films.
Hmm.
The greatest films, American films, have been mafia films, and it really demonstrates the artistry and the ingenuity and the plain genius of Italians as artists. Especially if you look at masterpieces like The Godfather, you have Pacino and De Niro and the whole the director and the writer and Puzo and Coppola and doing some of their greatest work in this fabulous masterpiece. you
Absolutely.
know and Donnie Brasco and Goodfellas and A Bronx Tale is another
Yeah,
favorite.
Bronx Tale might be my favorite movie of all time. I'm sure one of yours too, just growing up in the Bronx, I'm sure.
Yeah, Bronx Tale. Bronx Tale is fabulous.
To
You know,
me, you could correct me if I'm wrong too, but to me, like I see a Bronx Tale, and I think this is like maybe the biggest anti-mafia film of all time, just to show like the all the characters' arcs, like especially Sonny, like how he ended up, how his friends ended up just wanting to follow suit, and then I think like one of the heroes of the movie is Lorenzo, his dad, who just tries to push him on the straight path and talk about the strength of being a working man, and then how he follows like his heart and the good advice that Sonny gave him, and how he was his only friend that didn't end up hurt and on a good path going forward.
yeah, I mean, it definitely shows both sides of the spectrum. Um, it it's a film, that has the mafia, element to it, but it also shows, that there are Italians who don't believe, in that way of life. Um, so yeah, but I wonder, would Hollywood have made the movie if there wasn't the gangster element to it? I question it. Um,
That's true. We could talk about your article too. You wrote an article for the Italian Sons and Daughters of America titled Hollywood's Mafia Hypocrisy. And it's definitely worth the read. I'll link it all over the place when this is published. But you talk about how everybody's been apologizing for joke, especially comedians like Amy Schumer, Eddie Murphy, Jimmy Kimmel, Sarah Silverman, Fallon, Nikki Glazer, Jay Leno, for all, I guess, off-color remarks, whether it's the LGBTQ community, the Latino American community, obviously the African American community, but a lot of times too, it's like set in comedic context, and like I don't know, it's one thing when something's a joke, it's another when something's said seriously.
mhm. I mean, I think a lot of people today are saying there's a lot of, overcompensation, for stuff. And that's a whole other category that, it's neither here nor there, as far as my concerns with, my point is that Hollywood is bending over backwards and doing backflips to be woke and to be um, presenting a fair view of everyone and to make sure that people are well represented, not only in front of the camera but behind the camera, and even advertising in the communities that possibly weren't so they want to be, not offend anybody but try, and so they're doing all of this stuff, in the major categories now. A film has to have a bunch of checks before it can even be considered
Mhm.
for an award. But yet they can they're the tremendous hypocrites in that they have taken Italians, our entire history and our ethnicity, and they've created this stereotype, and they just keep promoting it and promoting it and promoting it. There are very few films since the late 70s up until now that have featured Italians in roles other than the stereotype they created. And the stereotype is either one or the other. It's
Right.
either some kind of criminal, activity or background, or you've got these Jersey Shore type, uneducated, unrefined, Gavone type. I say they have this buffoonish, uneducated, Italian image, and there is Italians have advanced the world, from Italy until Italian Americans now, in every single facet of what advances a society, in everything, in mathematics and entrepreneurism, in sports and in entertainment and arts and design, in politics, everything, everywhere. We talked about the food before.
Mhm.
Italians have done so very much, but yet when you look at the body of work that Hollywood greenlights, it's 99.5% of what they produce about Italians are either, criminals or, or Jersey Shores, that's the way we're represented. And because it's been happening for such a long period of time, it's not that that Hollywood intends to brainwash the world, but
Mhm.
they have, because, movies are the greatest teacher. They are a tremendous teacher. It communicates, so much information to the viewer. And so, when was the last time you saw the Italian as the thinker in the room?
Mhm.
When was the last time you saw the Italian as the cultured person in the room? You know, it's what they do, and really, it's like Italians have been forgotten in all of this fairness. Like, it's okay to do it to Italians, but it's not okay to do it to, all of the different. If you look at the Hollywood list of inclusion, there's a list of just about everyone except Italians. And it's really Italians who have to embarrass Hollywood, really, into doing something like was done at the Academy Awards when Marlon Brando, Little Feather, what was her,
Yeah, I believe it was Little Feather in the.
and I remember watching that. I remember watching that Academy Awards, doing something like that and embarrassing Hollywood, and somebody taking a stand and saying, you know what, I'm not accepting this award because of the way Italians are treated in Hollywood. What's it going to take? Because I think just sitting back and not and just talking about it isn't going to do anything. There's too much money being made. Hollywood needs to be taken to task over it, and they need to for it to be a public display of something where they say, okay, well, we need to make more films about people who are of Italian origin. Even if you made, even if you were talking about historic, like you're doing, like this weekly, special on Italians and who've contributed. Even if you've taken, the name, let's just say that, we have a script and the name of the main character is, Sammy Plant. Instead we're going to change it to Martini, so nothing else about the character has changed, but let's make some Italian characters actually be real people
Yes.
instead of this caricature and this stereotype, because it really hurts us as a people. Don't even tell me that we're not being judged. Why do you suppose there has never been an Italian president?
Mhm.
I honestly believe in my heart that um, it's because we're not trusted. We are judged across the country. I mean, you live in Queens or grew up in the Bronx, but you get to other sections of the country, they still view Italians in a certain way, and certainly the way they're being educated by Hollywood, they reinforce this
Yeah,
image
that I
of who
mean
they are.
That's so true. Just the contrast, because I grew up in Niagara Falls, Buffalo, and just the contrast of Italian Americans, like from just Western New York to the city, it's completely different. There's 150,000 Italian Americans in the Western New York region compared to millions in the New York City region, and New York City is obviously the most concentrated area of Italian Americans in the world. So you guess it makes you wonder what is being taught about Italian Americans in places like the Midwest and Montana in Utah, you know?
Sure. I mean, did you ever hear the story of Luigi Del Bianco?
No.
It's another person that you should do a story on. He is the main carver of Mount Rushmore.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, Italian immigrant, and his grandson has a book out, and he also does talks on him and so on and so forth. And they refused to give him credit for being the main sculptor of the faces on Mount Rushmore. And you talk about carving a piece of marble is one thing, you know, uh, you know, but just think of hanging off this or the side of a mountain, carving granite.
Uh-huh.
And I forget the guy's name right now. I read the book. He only wanted Del Bianco working on the features. There was a whole team of people there,
Mm-hmm.
but he was the one that they only wanted Del Bianco working on the features, and it was sheer prejudice. They would not give him credit up until recently. It just happened. I don't know. I think it was like 10 years ago, where
Wow.
he just got credit. I mean, he's long dead.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so and in the South, I mean, we all know that there was tremendous. I mean, there were Italians who was segregated,
Yeah, that's something that I've been reading about, like, because I think New York City was obviously number one for the immigration of Italian Americans, but New Orleans was number two. And when Italians immigrated from Italy, well, most of them ended up in New Orleans, Louisiana area. And
yeah. So
that's obviously where like the largest mass lynching in American history took place.
yeah, yeah. So again, it's there's a certain and then you educate people in the cinema and Hollywood about and it just reinforces these ideas instead of just again, whether it's you're writing a film centered on a historical fictional character, somebody who did something and made a major contribution to the world, or you just have regular people.
Yep.
Regular people, their name just happens to be Italian. Like that's the way the world is. Italians are educated people. Italians are diverse people, and it's really unthinkable as to what's happening right now and what's been happening since the late 70s up until now in Hollywood. So they need
Yeah.
to be called to task on it. And the only people I think who can do it right now are the Italians. People have to make noise. People have to say something.
Do you think the Italians as a group could do it, or do we need like someone like when Marlon like when you said when Marlon Brando did it when he was he didn't accept his Academy Award, but he had that her name was Littlefeather, I know, but I blanking on her first name. But when she accepted their word, because even still today, that's still something that people talk about.
Yeah, and it's a recent, it's made its way back into the headlines because I believe Hollywood. I don't want to misspeak. I think Hollywood, has publicly apologized, for that and so on and so forth. And some people might say, well, there's a time and place for everything, and maybe that wasn't the time and the place. I know Eddie Murphy did it too at the Academy Awards. he was giving out awards and he had stopped and made a comment about African Americans and how they're not really represented well in Hollywood, and people say, well, there's a time and place and everything for everything, but if no one's listening, then maybe the time and place is something like the Academy Awards, the
Yeah.
pinnacle of this, and say, hey, you're misrepresenting Italians. You're teaching the world that Italians are only one thing. Again, the Italian mafia exists. I have no issues with, I have no issues with the reality of the situation. I have
Yep.
no issues with like these quality films that have been made, about this particular, area. Not a problem. I mean, there are people out there who's like, well, I refuse to, but I accept it. It is. And plus, aside from that, every nationality has a mafia, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just that there's the Irish mafia, there's the Jewish mafia, there's, black mafia, there's,
Yeah.
Albanian
There's
mafia.
organized crime. Like, and then even
And
when you
there's
get into,
organized crime in every nationality. I mean, to say that it doesn't exist
yeah,
is,
but I mean, you could also argue that it's like when you're making like movies about, I guess, Colombians specifically, that like people don't view all Colombians as being drug smugglers just because there was a percent of a percent of a percent of people who did that back in the 70s or more recently than the mafia existed.
yeah, I mean, they're, Hollywood just has to be careful in how they continually perpetuate a specific thing. It's okay to depict reality. It's okay to depict, it's okay to make money. If, eh, if they're making money on something, hey, it's a business.
Yeah.
It's fine. If they're producing quality films, fine. I mean, really, I mean, like the films we mentioned before, Bronx Tale is a fabulous movie. The ones that we mentioned are all fabulous films. But you get in trouble when that's the only thing you do. So if all you're going to do is represent Italians this way, and if all you're going to, I mean, they've made changes, in the Latino community, they made, changes in the African American community, they've made the changes. So, it's there. They just have to focus a little bit harder. If you're going to start talking about inclusion and you're going to start talking about, including everyone and being fair, well, then let's be fair across the board.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are some movies that you love about that you love, I guess, that feature like Italian Americans? I know you mentioned a few in the article.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot. There's Gladiator features, the glory of Rome, and Unbroken is probably really the best representation of because they're, it's a true story, and they're just Italian. They don't get into anything. They just happen to be Italian, which is fabulous. Um, the other movies, Gladiator, Unbroken, The Karate Kid. It's tongue in cheek kind of a film.
Well, have you seen Cobra Kai?
I I I did, because so many people have talked about it. It became, but I'm looking at it and I'm saying,
It got a little nuts.
this is awful. I mean,
I like the first season, and the premise of the whole show is great. And then I mean, I just watch it because it's entertaining, but like it got just out of control.
I'm only in about, I've watched about 10 episodes, and I couldn't take that. I thought the acting was
Yeah.
really bad.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to single out any one particular person. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't like when people comment about somebody's specific performance.
Yeah.
There's some good acting in it. There is, and there's some other acting that I think's a little shoddy. And I think some of the karate moves are, in this day and age, with all of how far we've come in films,
Mhm.
some of the moves are just really fake,
Yeah.
really fake,
Mhm.
and so I'm looking, I'm like, no, they just did not touch that guy, and the guy flew across the room just now.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's Cobra Kai. Under the Tuscan Sun
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
was another film that I didn't mention in the article, but it was brought to my attention, and I said, "Yeah, I do. I did see pieces of that, and it was a good representation." Somebody else said Letters to Julia, which I didn't see, but I read
No,
about.
not really. That's almost like, I know there's like a British family in that. That's like the main.
Yeah, somebody said it to me, and I didn't see
That's
it.
fun. Moonstruck, I guess, would be
It's
one.
a comedy, and comedies I don't count because
Oh, you don't care.
the object of a comedy is to laugh at the characters,
Yeah. I
right?
mean, there's like one of my like favorite comedies of all time would be like My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And it would be cool to almost see like almost like an Italian version of that in a way. I guess you are still playing on like there's Greek stereotypes, but it's like
But that's a comedy. It's fine.
yeah, it's all in such great fun. It would be so
Yeah.
cool to see an Italian version of like something like that movie.
My Big Fat Greek Wedding is a superb movie.
Mhm.
I have watched that movie. I've laughed. I've even teared up at moments, like when the grandmother comes in and all the, out of her, kind of lunacy and her, she all of a sudden she becomes this warm, person, and she shows her the picture, and it's just
Yeah.
about family. It's
Yeah, I
about,
think a lot of Italians even love that movie just because like ethnic cultures like Greek and Italian, they all share like that same like culture and family and all like crazy relatives and like
yeah,
all of that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's some definite, similarities. But again, comedies, I don't count because again, the point is to
Okay, that
stereotype
makes sense.
and to exaggerate.
Mhm.
I mean, my cousin Vinny, has got to be, one of the funniest movies. I mean, I could watch that movie time and time
Amazing.
again, and still every single scene is funny.
Yeah.
And they're playing at, you
Yeah.
know,
I have an active crush on Marissa Tomei still. I,
yeah,
I think most men do.
yeah, for sure. When I first saw the movie the first time, I wondered. I said, like, he looks so much older than her. Like, is like legal? I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, wow, there's a huge age difference
Mhm.
here. But I guess the chemistry between them was so
So
good
great.
that it's just something you overlook, because you know what,
Mhm.
there have been people. I mean, to me, if he had been dating her for as long as they said they were, she would have been like 7.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So but God, funny movie, funny film. uh
Mhm.
Moonstruck, again, funny movie. Did you ever see Fatso?
No, that's the one everyone tells me to watch. It's Fatso and one big or the big night.
The Big Night, I've never seen
It's
Fatso's.
something about like two brothers that open up an Italian restaurant and I guess somebody tells them that Dean Martin's coming to eat there or something
I,
like that. I gotta figure out the specifics on that.
Marty is pretty, it's going back now. Now I'm real. It was before my time, but it was,
Mhm.
it's a comedy. Ernest Borgnine is in it, and it takes place, with an Italian family, and there's some funny things in it. It's not hysterical. It's not in the category of Moonstruck or My Cousin Vinny.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
So lots of films are funny, but again, I'm talking about serious, films about Italians.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody listening, definitely go. We'll link the article. It's on orderisda.org. We'll link it here. But yeah, other than that, the one thing we didn't talk about is how you're having a possible upcoming tour to Italy. You did it when you were a teacher. You would take kids to Italy on I guess for a giant field trip. I
Yeah,
forget the
that's
actual
pretty much
term.
what it was. It started off, I was teaching Romeo and Juliet, and I was doing a virtual tour of the Globe Theater. And I kept saying to the class, one of these days, we're going to do a class trip to the Globe Theater. And that's how it started. I just
That's so
said,
cool.
all right, I'm doing it. So I said, okay, we're going to do, London. And then I said, we'll throw France in there too, because they're pretty close. And we'll do like a little, double thing. And it was supposed to be a one and done. We
Yeah.
went, did the thing, and we came back. It was so unbelievable. The kids had such an unbelievable time that I said to my wife, I want to keep doing this. So we did, and we went all over the world. It wasn't just Italy, but we went,
That's awesome. And you did it all through the school that you were teaching at?
yeah, it was at
So
the
that's
school.
that's I think that must be like the entrepreneur in you because there's so many teachers, I guess, throughout the years that just like make broken promises, but like to actively like make these trips happen with these students, that's awesome on your end.
Let me tell you, I'd be lying if I told you that, you know more than 5 or 6 kids told me that it was the best experience of their life.
That's
So many
awesome.
of their life. People said that, this is the best part of high school, but other people, this is the best moment of my life.
Oh,
And there's something special about traveling with high school kids and them like going on their own and kind of just sort of feeling themselves out and learning and eating new foods. And um, it was fabulous. So anyway, after I retired, my wife and I were talking. We were like, let's do this with adults. So we put together. I took all the 10 years of my travel experience,
mhm.
and I worked with the group that I was working with to do the tours. With the high school kids, and we built this trip specially for adults, and it's fabulous. It's Florence, Rome, Sorrento, and Puglia.
Okay.
And I threw Puglia in there because it's a gem that a lot of people don't know about. There's some great aspects of Sorrento. Of course, Positano, and in Rome, you've got, of course, all that is Rome and Florence, and we have wine tastings and pizza making and gelato making, and
Oh,
um, I purposely ended the trip midweek so that if people want to, like, it's 10 days. So if people
mhm.
want to say, you know what, I really want to just park myself in Sorrento, from Wednesday until Sunday, and just hang out and enjoy
Okay.
it.
When
You
when is this? Is there a specific date for this trip yet?
yes, it's May. I don't have my May.
Because my girlfriend wants to go next year, and we're talking about it now because her sister and brother-in-law just had their honeymoon in Greece, and now we're just itching to go to Italy.
It's Memorial Day. Memorial Day. That's the Memorial Day night. It starts and it goes 10 days, so into the beginning of June. And really, if you want to put my email address there,
Yeah, absolutely.
and link it, people can, and I'll just send a copy of the itinerary. And if people are interested, it's going to be, I'm closing the trip out at 20 people,
Okay.
maybe 22, maybe, so 20 people besides my wife and myself. So I don't, big tours are just too much.
No,
Again,
yeah.
I'm just sort of using, the knowledge that I've gained,
Mhm.
to make this trip, a really good one. Something, I also don't want to pack too much in one day. If you've never been on a tour before, you said, but doing these tours, they could be exhausting. So I picked specific things. The days
Mhm.
aren't too packed. I included a lot in it, but not everything, to make sure that people had time to just have dinner with their friends where they want to, instead of every night included dinner. There, there,
Yeah.
there's a bit of a damper on that, because if you're in one place and the tour, books a dinner in a whole, you've got to stop what you're doing, possibly take a train going, no, we're going to be here. People hang out. The tour guide will suggest things, and there's great places to have dinner here, here, here. Meet us back here in 3 hours. Enjoy. So there's a lot of that built into
That's
this trip as
awesome.
well.
That's awesome. What's something like this? Is there a price on this yet, or?
Yeah, it's 53 and change, and that includes airfare, 3 dinners, the welcome dinner when you get there, which the first day is always like, that a farewell dinner. And then the night that we make pizza, that'll be our dinner that night. That's in Sorrento. Breakfast is included. All of the tours are included. All the transportation is included while we're there. All the buses, all a 24-hour tour guide who is with
Oh,
you every step of
awesome.
the way, meets you at the plane, takes you from there, brings you to the hotel, waiting for you with a bus, escorts you there, so it's got, and really, if people have checked out travel prices post the pandemic, and what you're getting in this trip for a 10-day, trip of this type,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
an excellent price.
Awesome. Yeah. We'll definitely throw all that up over the social medias. But it was awesome talking to you. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm sure we could talk probably for another half an hour, but we'll
Oh,
definitely make a, yeah, we'll
ne-
make a part 2 to this. Hopefully maybe next time in person. But
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Where can everybody check you out? What's your website, I guess?
Books by MikeDeLucia.com. I would love for Italians, I'd love for everybody really, but I just, I mean, sure, I want to sell my books. That's, every person, has pride in what they do. But, I could write all the stories I want and include, my versions of Italians. But the only way it's going to make it, it's way out there is for people to share it, for people to read it, for it to penetrate the same way Hollywood is. And I'm trying to make movies out of all these books that I have screenplays. So
Awesome.
I'm pursuing all of that to get these, to get my stories out there. So you can go to booksbymikedelucia.com, or you can just go to, Amazon. I'm sold exclusively on Amazon, and you just put my name in, Mike DeLucia, DeLucia, and my books will pop. And
Awesome.
check them out. And please, I love when people get back to me and say, hey, I loved your book. I gave it to my father. It makes me feel, okay, I've done this, and now people are loving what I'm doing. So.
Awesome. Oh, I forgot to check if there's any social media questions. We'll see. I put it in late, but no, unfortunately not.
Okay.
That's on me. I always post those too late, but yeah, thank you, Mike, again for coming on. We'll definitely do this again for sure. Everybody that's listening, go buy a book. I know I'm about to go grab Madness after this and read that. I'm excited, but and if you're ready to go to Italy next May, email Mike and we'll put his email and everything in the description.
One last thing. Also, the books are available as audiobooks as well.
Oh,
so
perfect.
if some people like, I don't have time to read, and believe me, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
But when you're driving in your car, or you're exercising, or you whatever, that's why I made the audiobooks.
Yep.
So that people could.
Is it your voice?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That must have took a long time.
I narrate. Yeah, I go to a studio and I pretty much, bang it out, and because I want, have it's available as an ebook, as a paperback, as a hardcover, and as an audiobook. Because
there's no reason for you not to consume this book in some way.
There you go.
Awesome.
All right, Nico. Hey, look, it's being on the wooden spoon. We didn't even talk about the wooden spoon, right? My grandmother used to spank me with the wooden spoon when I was a kid. We used to call it the wooden spoon with the burnt handle. And when she started chasing you around the kitchen table with the spoon,
oh yeah,
I knew you were in for it. But anyway, it's been great, Nico. Let's do this again. And
absolutely, 100%.
I hope we're traveling together, in Italy this year.
Yeah, we'll see. I got to talk to the old lady about it.
You go.
All right. Yes. We'll talk again. Everybody who's listening, thank you so much. Subscribe to the podcast. Let us know what you thought of the episode, and we'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.
Ciao.